Right. Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Chronicle. I'm your boy, Adam Taylor. If you're new here, then I've been covering the Celtics for around about 10 years. You can find me over at USA Today, SMG, over at Celtics Blog, and most importantly, over at the Celtics Chronicle newsletter. While you're here, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, go and hype this episode, and let's dive in. As usual, I'm joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Shields. What's popping, Tim?
Freaking weather. That's what, man. I'm freaking melting. I don't know about you, but they got a heat advisory over for us right now, and it's bad.
We had that last week, and then we've got it again next week. So if anyone's new here and you hear my accent, clearly I'm not in the US. That doesn't mean I don't talk about the Celtics all day, every day. So we're going to dive in because we're pressed for time and nobody really wants to hear our day-to-day updates. If you're on audio, then you probably care a little bit more than if you're on YouTube right now, especially if it's your first time encountering us. Celtics make 2 pickups today. They pick up Mike Conley on a 1-year veteran minimum deal, and then they go and pick up Mitch Robinson using the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception, and that's a 3-year deal with the final year being a player option. That's the scary part for an injury-prone guy, is it's a player option. Now, the good side is it's a tradable contract, right? It fits right into the MLE. So if the Celtics get a year out of him, 18 months, and then they find that they can package him to upgrade, then great. If he's doing excellent and the contract turns out to be great value, then that's great too. But either way, it's a super tradable contract. It sounds a lot once you put it into that like $42 million range. Realistically, it's not. He solves a couple of needs, both terms, in terms of Mike Conley solving a need and Mitch Robinson solving a need. But are the Celtics getting anywhere closer to what we're actually expecting from them heading into the new season? I think that's debatable right now. Tim, how are you feeling after these 2 moves?
I mean, I think the Mike Conley one especially came out of left field because it just kind of was like the first move that they made. And it was like, oh, okay, like I can sort of see this. And naturally, as soon as the move goes through, you get very polarizing opinions on Twitter where it's like they wasted a roster spot on Mike Conley. And other people be like, oh, like, nice. Like, okay, I didn't see this coming. I'm more so like the latter than the former in terms of those schools of thought where I didn't predict them going after Mike Conley. And don't get me wrong, like Mike Conley is like unk. Or if there are other players in the NBA that are unks, he's like super unk. And that's okay. It's, this is a guy who's been around for a long time and now this is the 14th player ever in NBA history to play 20 seasons, I think, was the tweet that went up by Shams earlier. So this dude's long in the tooth. He's played with a lot of different teams. It's a good locker room presence. And I think in like some sparing minutes, like I don't know how big his role would be, but sparing minutes, I think that's fine. I think he'll be serviceable. And more importantly, you're bringing like a really solid person, like just an overall, like outright stand-up guy. Putting him into that locker room can only help. I don't think this is not a commentary on the locker room as is, but it's just saying, hey, doesn't hurt to add good chemistry, guys. And then you went ahead and you signed Mitch. And I think that was a significant one. You addressed the rebounding issue right away. And I think that was a big concern. And I still think, my personal opinion, they're not done there yet. I think they're going to add another high-level big. So Mitch will probably either be, your starting center if you're going in a big lineup, or he's going to be the first guy off the bench for your backup bigs. But that entirely depends on what else the Celtics are doing. If you were looking at trying to get Robert Williams, Mitch Robinson is along the same lines if you're worried about injury concern. Like if you were entertaining a Time Lord reunion in Boston, then you should not be bothered by Mitch Robinson. Fresh off a ring with the Knicks, he's coming in, he's bringing rebounding, he's bringing offensive pressure on the rim. He's massively impactful on the boards on both sides of the ball. And it's something that the Celtics, or at least Brad Stevens, identified as a major problem. So we've talked about rebounding to the ends of the earth at this point, but I think immediately going out there and getting one of the top guys in the market available at the position, it immediately alleviates some of the concerns there. Are they done building? Am I happy with where they're at right now? Not necessarily, but they are still in the middle of building. And I still think there's another couple big things to drop before we actually see what this roster is going to shake out to be.
Yeah, I want to start with Mike Conley here, and then I want to touch on a couple of things you've said about Mitch, because there's reasons to be excited with the addition of Mitch. Conley for me is just, as you said, a veteran presence. He's a guy that's going to be towards the end of the bench. His shooting fell off last year. He had one of his worst 3-point shooting seasons of his career, if not the worst. It was around, once you account for removing garbage time minutes, it was around about 35% from deep. Shot better in the corners, shot 40% in the corners on low volume than he did around the perimeter. Everywhere else he struggled. It was terrible around the rim. I think it was around 44% at the rim. There were some really bad misses along the way too. And then the mid-range is an area we're not really going to care too much about, just because Conley doesn't project to be taking those shots. So why would we care about those shots for him? Even though I think that was also in like the 30%. It wasn't great. Defensively, he's old now. He's not really locking guys down on the perimeter. He's not doing much. He's still really good at navigating screens. He's a very high IQ guy. So he understands how to control angles, understands how to contain guys using just being able to position his body and use where they are on the floor and integrate the sideline and baseline as additional defenders. He's good at the stuff that you don't need to be young to be good at. Does that make sense? And then obviously his ability to read the game, he's going to be able to orchestrate stuff in the pick and roll. He's going to be able to drive and pick out options in terms of kickouts. The Timberwolves last season used him as an inverted guard a few times, and I feel like that's an area that the Celtics were missing once they lost Drew Holiday. And for anybody wondering what's he mean by inverted, it's simply when the smaller guy screens for the bigger guy. So it doesn't matter what position you're in. If you were the smaller dude out of the two in the pick and roll action and you're the one setting the screen, you're inverting the pick and roll. Drew Holiday used to do this a bunch, and then you'd see Drew kind of invert the pick and roll and then go into a short roll and then create out of that short roll. Chris Finch had used Conley in a very similar way for stretches, possession here, possession there, and it was quite successful. So I feel like if Conley does get some burn in the rotation at any point, whether it's due to injury or it's just rotation management and making sure he gets his minutes and making sure everybody's fresh, I can see them leaning into that pick and roll inversion, just because it's an area where Conley doesn't need to exert too much energy to just slip out of a screen, get the ball and make a read. And that's a really good way to protect him, especially as he gets older, and make sure that he's fresh as we get deeper into the season. So that's my thoughts on Conley. Leadership, great. IQ, great. Natural physical decline due to length of time in the league, to be expected. So you have to work around that.
Savvy. The buzzword I like is savvy.
There we go, savvy. I like it. Now we move on to Mitch. So there's a post on this. There's a video on this YouTube channel. There's a audio in the podcast players, whether you're listening to Apple, Spotify, whatever it may be. The episode before this, I was joined by Jonathan Macri, my homie who covers the Knicks. He's blew up over the last 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, absolutely crushing it. He was gracious enough to give me some time to just give me some thoughts on Mitch, losing Mitch from a Knicks standpoint. Like, some Knicks fans were crashing out that Mitch signed with Boston. And he had a lot to say, right? The offensive rebounding, just one of the things that I found really interesting, it was like, everybody knows Mitch is good on the offensive glass. Nobody knows how good until they're watching him every game. That bit really stood out to me. The other thing was the Knicks had Mitch on a minutes restriction all season, kept him in that 20 to 25 minute range. No second nights of back-to-backs, blah, blah, blah. We've all seen it. We've been there. We've had Rob Williams. You know how it goes when guys run long-term minute restrictions. I'd be shocked if the Celtics removed that minute restriction, because this was like a really healthy year for Mitch, apart from at the end when he got that fracture in his hand. This was a super healthy year. I don't see why the Celtics would then veer away from a plan that keeps him healthy after basically committing 3 years and a hard cap, which is what it is, right? You've committed 3 years of your MLE value along with being hard capped at the first apron to do so. There's some questions. I've seen people talking about his screening, saying it's good, saying it's bad. From the film I've watched, from the stats I've looked at, and I've watched quite a bit of film in him over the last 6-7 hours. And that's a lot of film to consume. His screening does not scream high level to me. I feel like his positioning is probably 5 to 10 degrees off in terms of the angle he takes when setting the screen. A lot of times he's patter caking guys. He's running past, slap them, and then go. I'm like, dude, that's not even a screen. We're playing hot potato with people's shoulders. Other times he does create contact, but the angle not being where it should be allows the defender to get over quickly. So there's not enough space generation there. Those are areas for me that can be easily improved. We've seen the Celtics work with bigs and develop them. And the reason screening's so important to me within this Celtics system is if you go back and look how Joe Mazzulla has utilized Luke Cornett, utilized Nemi, non-shooting bigs get put in heavy screening roles within this Celtics offense on the perimeter as slip screeners, as veer screeners, parts of 77 actions. You can go down the line. There's 100 different ways the Celtics are going to ask Robinson to screen, and he needs to be above average for that offense to work with him there. So that's an area of concern and growth I have. But other than that, I think Mitch is a great pickup. Absolutely great. He's going to elevate that defense, and him and Tatum on the boards is going to be ridiculous.
And I think that's really where it comes down to is it's just that rebounding factor. And I think the Celtics also are trying to increase their second chance opportunities. So I think it's very much just playing the possessions games of strengthening every single time you're going down the floor, chances of you getting an offensive board. They want to get that rim pressure up. They went out and they got one of the best rebounders in the league right now. And I agree with you when it comes to the minutes restriction too. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you could continue to work with him on conditioning and stuff. And, you know, for all of the flack that I think years back the Celtics got from like a training and health standpoint, especially everything after like Isaiah Thomas's injury. And then you even had to listen to some of that when it came to Rob Williams' injury. They've done a really good job of trying to manage people's workloads and trying to keep people healthy, in addition to getting the most out of those guys with those minutes. So he immediately is going to slot in over Keita. Like, I don't want that to ever be a conversation. Like, you're paying this guy the big money for him to be ahead of Keita in terms of the pecking order for the bigs. He's going to do really, really well with Jason Tatum with the pick and roll. He's a good lob threat. He brings a lot of size and toughness, something that the Celtics didn't necessarily have this year. You look at that matchup against Philly in particular, you really, really missed having a big body in the paint. And I get it. Like, hey, having a big like that, a traditional big, it's a double-edged sword. I will give Mitch a lot of credit, especially when it came to defensive versatility. For a guy his size, he moves pretty well. But I also think that's where some of the concerns about physically being able to keep up with that kind of workload in those minutes is if you're asking him to do a lot of switching and stuff like that. I don't know the exact number, so like, I'm not going to go off the cuff and say he's elite at that or anything like that. That's a very physical, demanding role for a guy his size. So I'm interested to see how they kind of change things, how much things defensively will change for them outside of their rebounding clearly just got better. Like it doesn't take you looking at a plot chart in the NBA to say adding a guy that's putting up defensive rebounding and offensive rebounding numbers like Mitch Robinson, like that's going to be a significant improvement on everybody on the roster. And that's just, you know, it's just a statement of fact. So I think the Celtics put themselves in a good position by adding one of the top bigs on the market. And it's going to give them a lot more flexibility when it comes to the way the rest of the roster is going to be built out. You know, we we talked about it a little before we hopped on, but like we still have this Jaylen Brown situation that's hanging like the biggest boot ready to drop. Now, you know, that went from no interest to a bunch of interest to 8 to 10 teams being in negotiations. So the fact that they're going ahead and having these conversations while also still going out and signing the guys that they need to sign is indicative of like, okay, there's an order of operations here, but they're also still getting guys and not hesitating to go sign them. So the fact that they went out and they still went and got 2 guys on the first chance that they could get, one of which being Mitch, the other being Conley, is good. I think it's indicative of them not hesitating when it comes to the tax. And I think that's a big point of contention with some people, is worrying about this new ownership group maybe going a little bit on the cheap side. I don't think that's the case at all.
No, I don't think that's the case. The Celtics are a little bit over the tax right now. They can be over it up until they're hard capped at the first apron, so they're not going into the first apron. What I will say is that they can be in the tax all year as long as they get out of it by the end of the year. They can cleanse the repeater. And I do expect them to do that right now. Jaylen Brown could be traded. If they take a few $1 million back less, then everything levels out instantly. You can still waive Delano Banton. He's on a non-guaranteed deal too. I think that in terms of adding guys now, that surprised me a little bit because I did feel like the Celtics were holding off because you don't know what gaps you're going to have once this Jaylen Brown trade, if a Jaylen Brown trade goes down. Like, are you trading Jalen straight up? Is it Jalen plus Nemi? Is it Jalen plus Hauser? Is it a package of dudes to get a different package of dudes? And I felt like holding off would allow you the opportunity to spend the money to plug the gaps where you needed. But guys were coming off the board so quickly that I understand why Brad moved. And I also think it's indicative of how much Brad wanted, like Mitch Robinson or a big like that, because of how quickly he moved and the money they committed. Now, do I think Mitch is going to be a switch guy? Not at all. I think the Celtics are going to go back to a defensive system similar to what we saw in 2024, where that was like 1 through 4 would switch, and the aim was to funnel guys towards the rim protector. And you're going to have Mitch there swatting stuff away. In terms of starting and ending games, I think we're going to see quite an even minute split between Mitch and Nemi if both of them are still on the roster come the start of the season. Macri pointed this out. One of the best ways to get around the hack and Mitch strategy would be to have Mitch start every quarter and Nemi wrap them up, because then you're not going to be hacking Mitch early in quarters. You're not going to want to get into foul trouble, and his minutes restriction won't allow him to play deep into those quarters. And then Nemi can come in and give you a very similar impact. And it's kind of like two bigs filling out that rotation. I will say one guy who I feel like could actually have a surprise jump this year might be Luka Garza, but just not at the 5. Mitch played double big with Cat this year. Now, Garza is not Cat, obviously.
What?
But Garza is, by all accounts, one of the best 3-point shooting bigs in the NBA. Right. Was that really funny?
Yeah, I just had to make a little joke at that.
Yeah, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, you can have Garza play a very similar role to what we envisioned for Danilo Gallinari before Gallinari got hurt. Just that catch and shoot, 5 to 10 minutes a night, where we're just going to put you in the 4, and we're going to run you off screens, or we're going to flare you off of a screen, or do whatever we need to do, and you're going to shoot the 3. Because you're going to be wide open because Tatum's drove and kicked it out to you. And if you miss, Mitch is there to wrap it up. Plus just the size you're going to have on the defensive end as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that with Mitch and with Nemi, just some double big. Now, the only downside is you lose a little bit of mobility there because Garza is obviously not the most mobile of guys. But I'd like to explore that. I think that there's a world where that can be a really beneficial part of the rotation. Now, the other question then becomes, when does the other shoe drop, right? And I think like we have to discuss this, and no matter how much it's annoying to everybody, including us, this is the biggest news around the league at the moment, is just what happens with Jaylen Brown. Now, you could argue that it's LeBron. LeBron has to make it about him. Oh, Jaylen Brown's getting traded. I'm leaving the Lakers. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not telling you where I'm going. I'm only messing around. It wouldn't be a Celtics podcast if we didn't poke at LeBron from here time to time.
Yeah.
With that, everybody, again, make sure you like this channel, subscribe to this channel, hype this channel. If you prefer listening to audio, the links are in the description. You can just subscribe and then get notified whenever a new episode drops. We will be back again tomorrow. I think I will be with Billy. Probably be with Billy. And then I'll be with Mike the day after. We'd like to keep it rotating up right here. Until then, we appreciate you. Let's hope the Celtics continue to make some moves. Peace.
Cheers.